panel 8 is first of two panels co-convened by Kyushu University. And this panel called PoliTech, or Politics and Technology and the Anti-COVID Measures in East Asia. I will now pass the time over to the moderator, Assistant Professor Benjamin San Jose, to introduce yourself and the panel and the speakers, and over to you, Benjamin.
Okay, thank you very much for filling me in. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benjamin San Jose from the Ateneo de Manila University of the Philippines. Okay, so welcome to our next panel. No? So the title of the panel is PoliTech and Anti-COVID Measures in East Asia. So what is PoliTech? It was coined by Japanese politician Koizumi Shinjiro, which has two meanings: technology for politics and politics for technology. So for today, we have three speakers who will talk about case studies from their different countries. So the first one is from Kyushu University. Professor Oga will talk about the convergence of politics and technology in the fight against COVID-19, political capital as a driving force in Japan and Korea. And then our next speaker is an associate professor from the National Taiwan University who will talk about PoliTech and anti-COVID measures in Taiwan. And then the last speaker is Professor Aysun Makibayashi from Dosisha University. So with that, I'd like to ask all of the speakers to kindly keep time, which is about 15 minutes. And then afterwards, I'll try to moderate some of the questions. And then for the rest of the Zoom channel here, feel free to write your questions at the chat box. So after everyone has spoken, then that's when we'll have an open forum, and I'll try to collate all of the questions. Okay, so with that, shall we start with Oga Sensei? Oga Sensei?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. Oh. Just a moment.
By the way, to Oga Sensei, Shao Sensei, and Aysun Sensei. So if you are near the 15-minute mark, about 14 minutes or so, allow me to just unmute myself and just to give you a gentle reminder. Now, sometimes we do not read the chat as much. Okay, sorry, Oga Sensei, onegai shimasu.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Toru Oga, and I teach and research international relations at Faculty of Law, Kyushu University, Japan. And the aim of my presentation is to examine what political logic has been exploited to promote technological innovation to contain the COVID-19. I focus on the comparison between Japan and Taiwan, Japan and Korea. Okay, so my research focused on the political logic to contain the COVID-19 in Japan and Korea. And both Japan and Korea are using technology to create the political environment that will contain the COVID-19. Deregulation and quick decision-making are necessary for the technological utilizations. The utilization of the technology is expected for hygiene management. The Korea has been successful, whereas Japan has not. In Korea, the failure to respond to the MERS in 2015 led to the establishment of the top-down vertical cooperation system and the construction of the control tower to prevent infections. With the public support for the government, the technological innovation has been exploited to contain the COVID-19, as well as to ensure public health policies. The people recognize the public interest is more important than invasion of the privacy and personal freedom. In Japan, nuclear control tower is evident by contrast. So horizontal cooperation system operates among the different government agencies. For example, the government wants to push ahead with the Olympics. Therefore, the initial quarantine measures fails. Furthermore, the government delay and the disclosure of the information and the mistrust of the information causes the mistrust of the government. And consequently, the countermeasure against infection disease using technology are delayed. So this presentation compares the those difference between the measures taken against infection disease and the effect in Japan and Korea. Okay, the central research question I propose, what political logic is required to contain COVID-19? In considering these questions, that there are two deadlocks that must be considered: the technological innovation and safety versus privacy issues. And to overcome these issues, that there are three hypotheses. The first hypothesis is a securitization, which means the securitization promotes the PoliTech. And so, first hypothesis is the securitization, and the second hypothesis is the PoliTech. That is, the PoliTech promotes the public trust, and the third hypothesis is the public trust promotes the securitization. So actually, the three hypotheses is circulating. So let me explain one by one. The first is securitization. The securitization issues include how the threat perception has been produced and how society have reacted, perceived them as a security issues, and what mechanisms has been realized to allow the quick and effective political decisions, for example, for employing technological innovations. So why securitization matters? Because to introduce effective measures to contain the COVID-19, most of the nations have to share the feeling that it is the share for the study. Therefore, government need to take some kind of the countermeasures. So this is a first issue of the securitization, and the second issue is a PoliTech. So the term coined by the Japanese politicians Koizumi Shinjiro, it means the technology for the politics, at the same time politics for the technology. This is a combining idea between the politics and the technologies. And finally, the public trust. The public trust in the government, or what we call political capital, is extremely significant in the practice of securitizations. This is because the only trumpeting the threat is insufficient. The public needs to understand the threat exists and accept painful measures that are necessary to contain it. And therefore, the trust in the government is essential. So in summary, to contain the COVID-19, we need a political logic, and we have three logics: securitization, PoliTech, and public trust. And the rest of the presentation, I will explain how the three logics works in the case of Japan and Korea. Okay, the first case studies. In this presentation, I omitted literature reviews, and I directly go to the case studies. So in the first case studies, the Korean case, the state-centered approach is highly required to prevent the spread of the virus. So the state's political capacity is necessary. The Korea's success is attributed to a top-down system of the government and the horizontal collaborative relation between the government and the Ministry of Health, and by which political capacity was increased. The Korea was able to respond efficiently to the pandemic since the cutting-edge technology were actively adopted under the integrated strong leadership of the government from the initial stage. The ICT build the relationship of the cooperation between the government and individuals that it plays vital role. So to summarize, there are 3 points here. So to summarize, A, the government is employing various policies to prevent the coronavirus from spreading, and its success has been highly evaluated in the world. And B, the government gained nation's trust, by which the ruling party secured the three-fifths seat of the parliament. So they got the majority of the seat in the National Assembly. And C, the Koreans are still considering the coronavirus is a serious threat by which the government could take countermeasure more aggressively. So what can be inferred from that is that it is a fact that the securitization has been facilitated in the Korea, and at this point, it is needed to examine whether and how the government was generating the discourse to gain the nation's trust. So the important point here is how the government provides the discourse to gain the nation's trust and to contain the COVID-19. Okay, the next one is the Japanese case. Okay, the central question is why PoliTech has not progressed well in Japan. The Japanese government measures to prevent spread of the disease did not actively utilize the personal data such as GPS, but rather called for the voluntary cooperation for the public. It is called by the request and support that did not have a power of the caution. And the COVID-19 contact confirming application we call COCOA, they're provided by Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, which detect and record the contact between users via Bluetooth in the smartphones. The first version of the COCOA was released on June 19, 2020. COCOA was concerned with protecting the privacy and utilizing the Bluetooth instead of using local data. And secondly, not identifying individuals. And thirdly, keeping the data on the individual device instead of accumulating it on the central server. The dichotomy between the safety and the privacy was firstly appeared in Japanese society during this period. Instead of picking up the authoritarian PoliTech in some other countries, including China and Israel, it should be questioned the surveillance society or privacy. For example, Asahi newspaper carrying on the opinion polls in 2020 March to the mid-April. So the one question asks do you feel uneasy about invasion of the privacy in the study using big data or not? And the 73% people, so 70% people, that means the most of the Japanese people answered that it is uneasy. And only 23% of the people answers not uneasy. And the next questions, newspaper asks, do you expect further use of the big data or not? And 39% answered expect, and 52%, so it is just over the half. The 52% answers they don't expect. That it means the Japanese public opinion is very sensitive to the privacy issues and has a creepy feeling about the use of the big data. So before the spreading of the coronavirus, the Prime Minister Abe saw the loss of the confidence of the Japanese people in the prolonging economic slump as the greatest crisis in facing Japan, and called for restoring our pride and confidence. Even after the recognition of the COVID-19, Prime Minister Abe emphasized the importance of the hosting the Olympic Games in Japan. In addition, the situation in which accountability of the Japanese government has always been questioned have created sense the government-led corona contact confirming application is the somehow untrustworthy. So in summary, it can be said that PoliTech would not be successful promoted without trust in the government. So even if coronavirus is solely perceived as a threat, those kind of the government trust is a kind of work for the Japanese people. So finally, conclusion. So why Korea succeeded, or why the Korea succeeded while Japan failed? The Korea is succeeded in the securitization and the PoliTech, the political capacity in the mobilizing technology and innovation and the public trust. The problem in Japan is the securitization. That there was a strong belief the surveillance has been a threat rather than the safeties. The PoliTech hasn't worked well. Since the low level of the public trust, the threat of the government surveillance is greater than the threat of the infection disease. So this is the reason why the Korea can success to contain the COVID-19, but why not Japan failed to contain the coronavirus and the infection disease? Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Olga Sensei, for maintaining time. No? So kindly go ahead and gather your thoughts, write your questions at the chat box, and then let's proceed to our next speaker. So our next speaker is, we'll talk about the case of PoliTech and anti-COVID measures in Taiwan. Please welcome Associate Professor from the Taiwan National University, Shao, no? Shao Sensei. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, I am sharing my screen. Yes. Can you see the screen? My slide?
Yes, Sensei, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. And oh, thank you, Ben. And the organizer members, thanks for inviting me. I would like to report PoliTech and the anti-COVID measures in Taiwan. Okay, I'm Hsuan-Lei. My family name is Shao, so just call me Shao. Associate professor of Taiwan Normal University, and this QR code is from our lab. Our lab is a lab of legal analytics. If you are interested in, you can see, you can scan it and see what we are doing. Mainly text mining for politics studies or data science for legal research. Today, I will talk about PoliTech. What is PoliTech? It means politics with or by technology. They combine two ideas together. So it's a new ideas. So PoliTech in Taiwan. So first of all, we are concerning about the role of technology utilization in political decision making. The technology can help political decision making. And the second, we are also concerning that the application of health management technology, especially in COVID-19 period. The health management is the first, most important case mission in this period. And the third, as a scholar, we must note that is a balance between public political power and privacy or private power, private personal freedom. I think public and privacy. In this picture, for example, in this picture, Taiwanese students eat their lunch on desk with plastic boards to keep them separating as a preventive measure. It is an example of PoliTech. Okay, it's reminding a theory from Michel Foucault's. It is called biopower. It concerns health and normality, and it also claims the two scientific knowledges. So it is also called biopolitics. Biopolitics also linking the human body to organized knowledge. You can see, you can all related it to the COVID, any COVID about COVID knowledge or COVID medicine developing something. And finally, the biopower to achieve social control by the body control. We will see some example of it from Taiwan. So in today's report, I will focus on introducing three aspects of PoliTech in Taiwan. So first of all, we will use new technology to achieve epidemic prevention policies, and these scientific and technological decision-making system developed because of the epidemic. One of them, the first is about communication. We will use press conference and press release information to communicate the government and the mass, the people. And the second, we developed vaccines reservation platform. You will see later a very complex platform to let people reserve their vaccines, and we have many kind of very detailed groups to who can get vaccine first or second. And the number three, about monetary is about footprint and the contact tracing. You will see example by detail later. Okay, first of all, the epidemic situation in Taiwan, compared with our neighbors, Taiwan seems very lucky in this epidemic period. We continuously keep low confirm cases in this time, and I myself think Taiwan is good enough in this period. So the first what? Okay. The first PoliTech is daily press conference by live stream. It is held by the Central Epidemic Command Center. We call the CECC. You can keep this in mind. CECC. This is the authority of Taiwan COVID-19 policy, the most authority. So they hold press conference every day, 2:00 p.m. Release news and information about pandemic, including the numbers of daily confirmed cases or everything. I must emphasize it is everyday live stream. It is everyday live stream, and the CECC Chief Chen answered the question directly. Maybe not every Taiwanese people can totally understand or agree all politics he decided, but the everyday openness communication can empower Taiwanese people. We at least know the government is doing something. It gave us trust to afford COVID inconvenience. In addition, they developed a chatbot from the CECC. It via social medias like Line. It's a Line chatbot. It gives us interaction from people and the policies. You can say policies, propaganda, something. The case number 2, politics, is vaccines reservation platform. We should register if we want or we did not want to vaccine, then we can book the vaccine. It's a very complex. They are step. The step 1 is make a reservation. We will register his or her personal information and the brand of vaccine he or she refers, and finish it. The step 2, it can book the which hospital or which something he can choose. It is very inconvenient way that I want mentioned. So we have many complex group. It is about maybe 12 to 40. Like you are nursing people, or you are elder people, or pregnant thing, a pregnant woman, and something, and the military government something. We have different groups. They have different priority to get vaccine. It's very complex. So don't you think it is very politics? The power decide the distribution the distribution of vaccine by their their policy, their priorities, something. Okay, so the chart shows the vaccine rate of individual priority groups. So the case number 3, PoliTech 3, it's a conform cases footprint table. It is very very PoliTech. I think every day the CECC can provide very detailed footprint by every day, even by hours in some cases. It is some positive cases. They in maybe in May 11th, he go to somewhere, some department, and in May 12th, he go to some parks every day where he went. So the data is collected mainly by self-reporting by the patient during the epidemic investigation, but sometimes the CECC use some information technologies, for example, CCTV or bus station positioning. So this chart is very impressive. It can even show where the positive case going on some maps. It is by GPS positioning. The graph showed where the positive people footprint. It is very politics, isn't it? So finally, it's my last slide. We have 3 PoliTech cases in Taiwan. The first, we use the live stream everyday regular press conference. Give the mass feel safe. It's about cognition. The second, the vaccines reservation platform can keep order, can give some priority and order for us to get vaccine. The third, the footprint can contact and the contact tracing can control our body movement. The government knows where we are going or we were going. So those 3 cases shows the biopolitics work in Taiwan. So this is my report and my email. If any following questions or something, please contact me. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Shao. Okay, so that was the... Okay. Okay, that was the presentation from Professor Shao from the Taiwan National University.
Yes.
Okay, so it's very interesting that we now have cases in Korea, in Japan, in Taiwan. I actually already have questions brewing in my mind. So I hope everyone also are excited with the topics, no? And thank you very much for keeping time. Okay, so feel free to again write your questions at the chat box. And then now we'll continue to our next speaker. Okay, our next speaker is a professor from Dosisha University. Please welcome, no? Assun Uyar Makibayashi Sensei. Okay.
Hello, can you all hear me? Benjamin?
Yes.
Okay, nice to see you. Hello, everyone. Hello from Kyoto. It's a great honor for me to be part of this interesting 3-day conference. And I'd like to convey my thanks to Oga Sensei for inviting me. Thank you very much. So I have 15 minutes. Let me share my slide. Okay, yeah. Okay, our panel title is, our keyword is PoliTech. Let me tell you from the very beginning, my presentation is rather looking at the regional organization. In our case, in East Asian case, the largest regional organization, including Southeast Asia, we can say ASEAN. Basically, I'm looking at ASEAN and how they are taking COVID-19 pandemic crisis as a tool for their further regionalization. I haven't touched upon the PoliTech issues in detail that much, but in the end, actually, I was checking after Oga Sensei kindly invited me to this conference. I was checking, and of course, politics and technology, and they are all interlinked, especially for these non-traditional security issues like pandemic crisis. We have them already, especially with the vaccination rollouts and a competition at global scale. So basically, this research is not all completed, actually. It's a running research still towards its completion, but there are still different questions. And at the bottom of the page, actually, that this is a research project funded by Dosisha University's urgent research related with COVID issues. Last year, I started, actually, it's a small project. Basically, I wanted to check how regional organizations as case studies, I took Europe from different regions, actually, European Union, ASEAN, SAARC from South Asia, Mercosur from America, and African Union from Africa, how they're responding to these pandemic crises. As we know from the very beginning, with people travels and everything, it's by definition, it's an international and global crisis from the very beginning. And I just read recently that the first international case after China started in Thailand, actually found in Thailand. I didn't know that one also. In a way, it became international and global in Southeast Asia. So how these regional organizations are taking these COVID pandemic or pandemic crisis, and how regional communities are collaborating around these similar issues or the same issue. And would this pandemic lead to further regionalization? Would this be a catalyst or spillover effect? Would this create the spillover effect as non-economic spillover effect for further regionalization and regionness vis-a-vis securitization of pandemic crisis by national governments? Of course, we've been seeing actually all these ways that in the very beginning, governments took it very securitized the issue, as we already heard from Oga Sensei also. And then they took it and they responded in a very national way, at national government level. But immediately after that, it turned into, because of WHO's initiatives, United Nations and other initiatives also, it turned immediately international. And I think the first step that the government should collaborate at international is regional level, regional organizations. So the main hypothesis is basically the case, like the case in environmental issues, pandemic crisis would also lead or encourage or force, because each regional organization has a different response mechanism, but this would be a catalyst to deepen the level of regionalization in different ways. Basically, the data surveys, interviews, not that much actually, but I'm still completing, and the survey on the limited literature. And there is just a little bit now, the literature in the last 1 year, actually. We know this, we are just in the second year now. And the literature, whether regionalism or regionalization of regional organizations can be linked with pandemic crisis, that we have a little bit of literature now. So basically, there are 3 parts in this short presentation. And Oga Sensei mentioned in his email that we can only have 5 slides. So I really condensed so many words in slides. Sorry for that. While looking at the regional responses, here I only take into consideration ASEAN's response, because it would take so much time if we took other EU, Mercosur, and AU and other organizations. But in my rather old research that I'm looking at each organization, but today we are only focusing on ASEAN. Time frame is very much important. First of all, how we defined first, okay, this is crisis, like definition, global and international and national responses, securitization of the issue, and then the vaccine in November last year. I think we had the first is Pfizer vaccine, and then the rest also came in the vaccine haste, vaccine competition, different waves. I don't know which wave that we are in now. I think the fifth in Japan. And the regulations like the vaccine passports, rollouts, restrictions, and then vaccination and normalization gap, unfortunately, in between, because it's already said that this will be developed and developing countries gap in a way, or within each region also, like the urban areas, rural areas, that especially Southeast Asia we see. So vaccination and normalization gap is already apparent. And then while taking into consideration this time frame, because it's non-traditional security issues, pandemic crisis like earthquakes and the natural hazards, that we have to respond immediately. I think that is very important while defining this crisis. And then how regions responded differently. Of course, they have different ways, like the bold economic support packages by the EU, and it already it was criticized as being too late. And then like the emergency funds by SARC organization and the quick mobilization, like the African collaboration in a way is really applauded already. And then the data gathering with no noticeable roadmap in the beginning, like ASEAN from the very beginning fiercely criticized for not really taking bold measures to meet the to take the measurements against the crisis. And then recovery plans, vaccine rollout plans, and safe travel guidelines, they are all taking place now in different, like at national level and international, like regional organizations also. So all responses are different depending on the time and the regional peculiarity, and different governmental responses. In a way, they're also getting one-to-one with regional organizations a little bit. And this also showed in the very beginning the weakness of regional governance. And then the question of regional dimension, looking at the internal dynamics of regions, how they are really collaborating, how they are really sharing data, and on data gathering, data sharing. And in this point, I think it is very important this politics and technology, PoliTech, is coming to the head. Then how they can really frame their standards, their monitoring mechanisms for future pandemic crisis. I think this is like the defining point, whether one regional organization can take this pandemic crisis. It is kind of my concluding point also, whether one regional organization can take this pandemic crisis as a chance to deepen its regionalization and regionness, its natural regionness flow, or not. It's a kind of test case also for all regional organizations. This is also related with their identity crisis. And we know like EU and others also, they always have this identity crisis. And the second part, I am looking for this presentation, actually not all for the whole research. How about the East Asian, but specifically looking at like official platforms, ASEAN here in large East Asia, how ASEAN took and has been taking this crisis. Again, the red lines I think are important, and the green lines. It's of course it was criticized from their being indecisive and timid for its first responses. And this is just one of the latest data, like how vaccine rollouts are taking place in different parts, how they will reach to the level in different parts, like as we see for the ASEAN country, like Singapore is of course in the first group, like Japan is coming next year. But we have usually like the mid next year, we have Cambodia, Malaysia, Brunei, and Myanmar like 2025, depending on countries' performances. And ASEAN also from the very beginning, of course, it was criticized, but finally, well, we can say it started, let's say, already in December 19, and in March 20, it was defined as a pandemic crisis by WHO and ASEAN Emergency Operations Center. And then ASEAN Senior Officials Meeting on Health Development. These are official, in a way, regional level institutional responses that they took steps. And like one of the boldest, maybe the boldest step by ASEAN, ASEAN Comprehensive, this green line actually, ASEAN Comprehensive Framework in November 2020, they signed. And then just January 21, I think that was the right timing, COVID recovery guidelines for resilient and sustainable international road freight transport connectivity within ASEAN. In a way, looking for the post-COVID preparations, especially traveling or interaction guidelines. And we can say compared to other places, and I think because I always see that ASEAN's, of course, it might be sometimes late, but they are taking steps at least. And in a way, as I said in the very beginning, as I said in the very beginning, it might be whether voluntarily, whether it might be taken as a chance for further regionalization, or it might be some enforcement mechanism. But in ASEAN's also case, compared to the others, that in the beginning it was a little bit slow, but at least in midway, because we don't know, we are still within the crisis, we don't know how this COVID pandemic crisis will end. So we can say in like 10 months, in 1 year, they took these bold guidelines. And again, ASEAN meetings and ASEAN +3 meetings. And I think the last one also just 25th of August that they took with Japan and with ASEAN +3 meetings. And there also they agreed on, again, this travel issues. Again, this is related to PoliTech issues. 21, sorry, August 21. So we can say that for the ASEAN, there is ASEAN way, Amitabh Acharya's way of defining ASEAN. There is this peculiar ASEAN way, but ASEAN, not but actually, and this ASEAN way is maybe being used and taking as a chance for monitoring, for further communication and for regional interaction. Maybe it was a little bit late to start with these big international or regional level steps, but still, especially virtual communication means are like some new ways of diplomacy, regional interaction, and then that would definitely lead to further non-economic, non-traditional spillover communication within the region. Okay, this is the last slide. Am I okay, Benjamin? How many minutes do I have? 2, 3?
You still have about 3 minutes, so
okay,
please take your
good.
time.
I'm very good in terms of timing. So this is my last slide, 5th slide probably. Yeah. And in the last part, like looking towards the conclusion, as I said, I haven't completed my research, and still I have to submit my paper for the Ascos actually. So looking at the differences, different regional responses, again, there is this important like securitization of this COVID pandemic crisis by national governments. And there has always been, there's always this national governments, regional institutions, how they are clashing with each other. And this is kind of challenge also for regional organizations, clashing regional and national responses. And throughout the process since, let's say, March 2020, that this pandemic was officially defined, that we see maybe slowly, but regional organizations are taking their steps, especially EU, and EU is recently also pushing for interregional linkages and collaboration. And they need it actually, even national governments, because the most important, I think, the chance or the capability of these regional organizations, they can provide data for interregional, international travel, actually, monitoring these travels and data for people's movement. And I think this is very key for controlling pandemic and sharing data, and for vaccination also. And in the midterm, regional organizations like ASEAN case is covered in this presentation. They are becoming monitoring, like in the middle, I think I wrote in here, they are becoming monitoring, especially for this political technology connection is very much important. Their power, in a way, RO's power, and coordination and then cooperation platforms for resilience of these within these regions, and also for preparation for future possible crises. And definitely we will have more and more crises like that. This is all reality, as we all know. So as a conclusion that I can see for this short presentation, and as I think hypothesis of my research also, that there is this potential, whether it is voluntary, whether it is forced, it's different in each case, for each RO, regional organization. But we can say there's a potential for regional organization to take this as a chance also for further regionalization, but still there are some questions. Again, I would like to see more, I would like to check more on this similarity between how regional organizations are responding to environmental crisis and this pandemic crisis, because they are within this entity, the non-traditional security group, but again, they are becoming security issue by heart, and how these ROs will respond to crisis in different time frames. This is very important. And again, still we are in the middle of the crisis. We don't know how it's really going. And then whether these regional responses could be a spur for further regionalization. And I think this is the biggest question, and I'm still there. I think I should stick with that one, and then whether they can also get over their identification problems, these regional organizations, while focusing on their collaboration and data sharing, monitoring is their power around similar or same issues in the mid and long term. Okay, I would like to stop in here. Hope that we will have more discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Makibayashi Sensei from Dosisha University.
You can call me Aysun, it's okay.
Aysun,
Okay.
Professor Aysun.
Yes,
Okay,
thank
so
you.
everyone, thank you very much for keeping time. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentations. I think we really have a good synergy of presentations and case studies. Now, so I'm also glad that people are already writing your questions at the chat box. But for now, please allow me to give my quick question, no, to the three panelists, and then afterwards, after they have responded to my quick questions, if you allow me, then we can open the floor, no, with your questions that have already been written in the question box. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to be the moderator for this panel, and allow me to just ask several questions to each of the presentations. For Oga Sensei, thank you very much for your wonderful talk. It's very interesting that you have compared the case of Korea and Japan, no? And then in your argument or in your analysis, you said that in Japan, it's quite a failure because their threat of surveillance is bigger than the threat of infection. And then you argue that this is exactly due to the lack of political capital, at least for the Japan case. No, so my question is, what led to actually this? No, I mean the lack of political capital in the Japanese case. Is it a case of communication? No, so I'm just looking over the presentations of Professor Shao and Professor Aysun. No? So is it a problem of communication? Is it a problem of trust in the technology? Is it a problem of regulation, of that you do not trust the technology behind it? Or is it really just a matter of trust in the government officials and their current leaders? No, so which among these? And then, of course, we also know, and then you also mentioned the mixed messages that the Japanese government have said, no, due to, for example, the slow cancellation of go travel, no, they demand people not to be so mobile, and yet they still continue with the games. I think these are common topics that we have been discussing. So would you like to discuss that further? So what led to actually this lack of political capital? Now, my next question is to Dr. Shao. Thank you very much. No? So you mentioned the three elements of PoliTech in Taiwan, which are communication, distribution, and monitoring. And then you mentioned that it's really communication plays a role. It leads to a spiritual, how do I say? You help the citizens, no, by giving them and being transparent. Now, my question is, what is the role of political parties in this case? No, I mean, right now you of course have the Democratic Party of Taiwan, which is the administration, and then you have the KMT, no, which is the opposition, and then with the recent wave of, I mean, not quite recent, but a few months ago, with the recent wave, it just shows that communication, distribution, and monitoring really only goes so far if the vaccination rates are not so good, no? And then right now your vaccination rates have picked up. So that's just my question, no? Could you care to respond the issue of vaccination rates? And then what is the role of the political dynamics? No? Because you've talked mostly on the PoliTech, but how is it related to the trust to the political parties? Does it play a role, or do they really see this, the CECC, as a independent and non-political body? So I'd like to hear more on that aspect. No, okay. And then the last one is for Aysun, Professor Aysun. You mentioned that, and then you argue that similar to other international issues such as politics, such as environment, no, the pandemic can be a push, no, towards stronger regionalization. Now, this is just my question. No, I think you showed a very interesting slide showing that the prospective schedule on when the East Asian countries will be able to reach herd immunity, which is defined by 60% vaccination and above. And then you can show that some of the East Asian countries can reach it by this year. Japan, and for example, could reach it by Q1 of next year. And then the Philippines is quite late, no? So it's about Q3 or Q4 of next year, and then Laos and whatnot for the next year. So it really shows about vaccination distribution again, no? So although the vaccination rates have picked up even in the Philippines, I think there's the real concern, even mentioned by the WHO, about the parity and the distribution of vaccine. No, for now, it's still a very state level initiative, right? I mean, of course, we receive COVAX vaccines, but I'm not sure if, or I'm not aware if ASEAN is actually lobbying for more distribution to the global south, for example. No, or as a bloc, is there a way to ask for more distribution and more access? I mean, we could always pay for the vaccines, but it's really the problem of supply. So, would you like to discuss that? No, because so far, the case studies that you have discussed is more on the coordination and then the data, and then maybe some good practices when we talk about border control and whatnot. So, those are some of that's basically my question about vaccine distribution. Okay, so those are my quick questions to all the three panelists. So I'd like to hear your responses. Thank you very much. Feel free to answer. Shall we start with you, August, since you were the first speaker?
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you for your question. Your question is what is the cause of the lower political capital? Is a cause of the policy or communication or technologies? I think the communication failure is the essence of this problem. And so just remember, the same failure occurred with the nuclear power plants on the March 11 in the 2011. So not only the COVID-19, but also in the nuclear power plants incident in the 3/11s, the accountability, in both cases, the accountability is weak. So this weakness of government communication in the Japanese politics need to be researched in the more. And actually, one of the common characteristics in the Japanese politics is the government's weak accountability and weak communication to the people. And maybe it caused by the nation's public trust is very lower toward the government. And in the related factors, of course, the policy failure have led to the communication failure, and also there is also this trust of the technology in the people in general. But those problems that can be limited to some extending through the communication and accountabilities. So I think the central problem is the accountability and the communication from government to the people. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much for the quick response, Olga Sensei. So there you go, everyone. It's communication and accountability, and it has been going on even with the other major political issues in Japan, namely the 3/11 issues, which has already passed for quite some time. Okay, let me now turn on to Dr. Shao.
Okay, thank you, Ben and the fellows. I show you some pictures. Yes. Okay. Can you see my pictures?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Shao.
Okay. This is another press conference from Taipei City. You know, the CECC press conference is from the central government, and our local government have their own press conference. It's almost every day. Like the Taipei City, it's a different parties from DPP. It's a local party, so they have their self communication way on every daily place. Of course, it is connected to their political supportive things. So they would show their effective in everyday conference. And this picture shows different. So you can see the central government have their own policy, but the different different local governments, local city governments have their own supportive. They are also competitive. Their supportage.
Mm-hmm.
And the third, hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but I think the third picture is not shown.
Okay, I can show it again. This one.
Okay.
So, okay, you can see this. This picture related Ben's question. The blue background is from KMT. So you can see most local governments. They are local governments. The politicians' picture, and their ranking. Their ranking on the pandemic policy. So number 1, number 2, number 3. It's by some survey, by some media survey. So the blue ground is from KMT. So you can KMT's local politicians are located maybe higher. I'm not sure. And the green background is our DPP, is our central governor party. So this picture can show us the central politics and the local politics is different, competitive in Taiwan. Okay, this is my short answer. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Shao. So there you have it. So he explained that the national level is very different from the local level, and that there's more dynamics, no, with regards to this. Okay, so I'd like to now ask Professor Makibayashi, no, Aysun Sensei.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. Thank you for your good questions, actually. I think overall you asked a question to everyone about this trust issue, and there is this from Asia Center's chat. Can I take them first? Because they are similar. Like in the chat from the floor to Aysun, they wrote, PoliTech is not positive, but a negative outcome for ASEAN people. They are under more monitoring and surveillance and legally prosecuted for criticizing the political mismanagement of the pandemic, what we are told. I think they are kind of, we can condense these questions. This trust issue, unfortunately, everywhere, because how governments took it, how they securitized. And like in my country, I'm from Turkey, how Turkish government responded and took this crisis as a chance for even securitizing the other issues linked with this pandemic crisis, unfortunately. So we see these cases in other countries also. It's again, country by country, it's different, but the main responses. And I think this trust issue basically is directed towards the governments. Like Oga Sensei, how he's looking at these similarities, how these reactions from the societies. As far as given my like limited reading within the literature, I don't see that much of initial reaction to ASEAN institutions, first of all, because somehow maybe how you feel, I don't know, I would like to discuss in more detail. Like the first reaction of people, even myself, is to look at my government, not to look at the regional organization. I'm not looking at ASEAN. I'm living in Japan, I'm looking at the Japanese government with all these failures also, as you mentioned, Benjamin. So if I were in Turkey, I would look at the Turkish government probably. Exactly. Then I would look at EU, how EU is supporting Turkey or not. So I think this is the first reaction. In a way, in the beginning, you know, there were many discussions and there are still actually, okay, this was a chance for national governments to gain their statehood again. This the idea of state as an actor became really this colossal big actor again, thanks to this crisis in a way. So I don't see that much of, but again, as I also wrote in my slides somewhere, as I also read in the literature, and I'm also writing my paper like that, in the very beginning, all these international organizations, the regional organizations are criticized. They've been criticized still, but basically they are criticized not directly by people. Of course, there are cases, but by national governments not providing enough vaccination, for example, not providing enough monitoring facilities, for example. So I think this trust issue, but it is there actually. First of all, national governments, and then these regional organizations probably. And I think this is also, first of all, from the floor, that this monitoring issue also, when I mentioned monitoring is very important and it's the power of these regional organizations, I was not really meaning these controlling applications like COCO in Japan and other, but basically international travels. In a way, the way the classical monitoring that they've been doing already, and they are sharing, basically national governments are taking these traveling data and they are sharing within ASEAN, within EU and other places. So I was meaning that actually, not those individual applications like Shao Sensei mentioned that one went to Burger King and other places. So coming to your individual question, like vaccination is also controlled by national governments, as you are right, and each government potential, again, and I think it's not only, there is one thing about this vaccination, it's not 100% controlled by the government, because it's by people actually. People go for vaccination or not, you know, especially in Japan, it's by choice. Then it is very slow in different countries also. It's changing. In EU is a little bit more like, I think, active. They are really pushing people in EU. In Turkey now, they switched towards that side, that they are now pushing people to do more vaccination. Before it was all free. So again, this is somehow not even national government, but ASEAN level, as far as I know, as far as I read within the literature, like the recent news also, like EU, when they send this, their contribution to COVAX, this Gavi and COVAX collaboration, they signed the treaty with ASEAN, like the United States also, they send like the largest bulk in the very beginning, and they sign it with ASEAN, like ASEAN health monitoring, some centers also they have, they agree, they talk with ASEAN. And then it is also, and by the way, they also have individual, this United States, Cambodia, United States, Philippines, probably, that they have these linkages also. But in a way, they take ASEAN as one of the main pool to deal with COVAX issues. And there also these RO's power or potential also comes up a little bit. Okay, I think I'll stop here. Is it enough?
Okay. Yes, thank you very much,
comment?
Aysun
Okay,
Sensei.
thank
Okay,
you.
so thank you very much for our three speakers for responding. So let's now go to the follow-up questions. No, so we have a question here in the floor directed to Oga Sensei. Oga Sensei, it says, in Japan and Korea, what is the role of privacy and data protection laws in relation to PoliTech? Which is more important, law or law or culture of privacy? So would you care to respond to that?
Okay, thank you for your questions. Firstly, I'll answer the question directly. Okay, the comparison between the Korea and Japan. In the Korea, we have enacted the series of laws that emphasize public safety over privacy. But the situation is different in Japan. The Japan, on the other hand, did not go so far as to enact laws, and so we didn't restrict the privacy, and we didn't restrict the private rights. So why those differences arise? So what is important here is not difference between the laws or political system, and not difference between the culture of privacy or something like that. But more important things is those legislation is possible because there is enough public trust. That it means the fact that the many people in Japan, they're saying privacy is important to them. Yeah, the many people in Japan says the privacy is important. So it means, in other words, so they just saying that they don't trust the government enough to intervene in the privacy. So also there is an argument for the authoritarian advantage. That it means the countries with authoritarian regimes can do more effective measures to containment of the coronavirus. But I think those argument is fundamentally wrong, because what is important here is not political system, whether this is a democracy or this is an authoritarian regime. But so the important thing is whether there is enough public support to allow the concentration of power or not. And the country with authoritarian regime are maybe the extremely example, but at least we can compare with Japan and Korea, and it shows that those difference in the public, the difference of the public trust will differentiate those two countries, the policy and the effect. So that's my answer. So the essential point is the public trust, the not legal things and not cultural things. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. No, so Olga Sensem argues that it's not so much the system or
Mm.
not the culture, but it's really just about public trust. Okay, so as just jumping from that, um, I was just looking over the presentations a while ago. So this is a follow up to Shao Sensei since we do not have much questions in the floor. You mentioned about the potential of microscopic power, no? Of even after the pandemic, then you would have the use of PoliTech, no, to monitor or to control or at least to reach out to the people. No, so would you care to elaborate on that? No, especially again with the political climate in Taiwan.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Yes, it is very critical things about privacy or government power to control it, to uh, monitor us. But I think it is very special period because of COVID-19 or something. So uh, not 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 a public opinion against it. Instead, they often ask government more control us, more money, more,
Monitor us.
yeah, monitor us more. We need to know more who is positive case, where he goes, where he went, or he contacts who. So I don't know. It's very maybe it's a very Taiwanese style. We very afraid disease more than afraid political power. I
Okay,
think.
so thank you very much for that question. So it's very interesting. No, it's very different. There's a follow-up question actually on the floor. It says here, which political party? No, so again, this is related. Has more thrust in using PoliTech, the DPP or the KMT? No, so
Mm.
basic, and then um, there's a question of the role of mainland China. No, is there also some dynamics of Politech against Taiwan? No, so basically, Politech usage of the DPP and the KMT. So, would you care to answer that?
Mm, pardon, once again, please, Ben.
Okay, so it says which political party is more oriented towards the use of Politech, the DPP or KMT? No, so that's the basic question in the floor.
Oh, okay. You mean use politics? Of course. DPP is a main party in Taiwan recently, so they have the on the central power in Taiwan. So DPP often bring or provide policy about everything, such as CCC policy or monetary policy. Uh, and on the other hand, the KMT often against it. Against it, so you can see it's a very controversial situation. Uh, KMT seems a very liberal, liberal party, and on the other hand, DPP seems very detective,
Mhm.
detectiveship party. It is very controversial situation recently.
Okay, so thank you very much for that update, Dr. Shao. Okay, so we have a question here from the floor to Professor Aysun. It says here, I think we are going to the case studies of all our countries. There's even a question about the Philippines, so I'll give a quick response to that later. But for Professor Aysun, no, so is Erdogan using Politech approach in Turkey as well. Has there any been pushback? So would you care to respond to that?
Wow.
It's
That
kind
is
of
out of
warm.
my range now. I'm not an expert on Turkey, and I don't like him at all. Let me tell you from the very beginning. We are waiting for the end of his term for about 18 years now, from the first day. Um, I think there is no tech part with the government's response to the pandemic crisis from the beginning, from March 2020. They are not using that much of tech part. They are using the political part, unfortunately. And from the very beginning, they really said, okay, this is something from the outside, enemies and stuff. He was even defining pandemic crisis like that. And they denied first, and then they created some enemy. And they actually control the data if you are looking at the tech part. And if you're asking as for PoliTech, because there are many items, to call as part of PoliTech, but as far as I can understand, if I'm wrong, please correct me for the person who's asking this question, please. For the PoliTech, if we are talking about these apps following people reporting, like putting their whereabouts and everything in data, we don't have that actually in Turkey from the very beginning. They tried from the very beginning, but people just neglected. People didn't care about it. And we don't have that one. They have like the big shopping malls and stuff. They only some registries and something. But for example, they even hide the data who got the coronavirus positive, like the PCR test numbers, the whereabouts of the people who got the virus and they lived around and everything, where they went from, where and when, and they even hide that data. Maybe we needed a little bit more tech part, data sharing for that he didn't use from the very beginning. Is that enough? Is that sufficient? I don't know how you meant actually for PoliTech, but we needed more technological and scientific support for the government's reaction to pandemic in Turkey. Actually, we still need it.
Okay, there's a follow-up question, Dr. Aysun, as well. So it says here, is ASEAN low-level spillover born out of low trust from the start? No, or the low trust of this certain model of regionalism?
And a model for regionalism in Northeast Asia. Okay, this is interesting, connecting these ASEAN references with Northeast Asia. I think I'll take this question in my writing. It's quite a good question. Thank you. I don't know who asked this question, but a low-level spillover, I think we can define spillover or classify spillover tracks in a way, like the economic spillover, non-economic spillover, traditional security, non-traditional security. Then we can really name them whether it's a low level or high level, because ASEAN's economic, spillover effect is quite, vis-a-vis, we can say, more or less successful one compared to other regional communities. And born out of low trust from the very beginning, of course, there was this low trust, and then we can call this security-related spillover channels that from the very beginning, it's a low level. That's why, like Acharya also defined this ASEAN way of doing things in a way, it's a unique way. And whether it might be a model for regionalism in Northeast Asia, actually, I have one publication comparing this Northeast Asian and Southeast Asian on environmental issues, how regions react this environmental gathering, environmental spillover cooperation effect. They're actually, my conclusion is sort of that they have a little bit different tracks in Northeast Asia, how they gather together, and ASEAN, how they gather together. Then it might not be probably a good model for Northeast Asia. But again, I have to underline that depending on which spillover channel we are talking, whether non-traditional, traditional, or whether economic or non-economic, depending on that one. But for the environmental that I did in my publication, related with that one as an example, if I might say, on the environmental channel, they, by nature, that they were different, that I concluded in my writing that time. I think that's okay. That's all right. If you have more questions on that, of course, I'll be happy to discuss.
Okay, so just for the sake of adding the comparison with other regions, there's a question here on the case of PoliTech in the Philippines. No? So let me just share that unlike, for example, the case of Japan or Taiwan or South Korea, wherein you have a very robust technology to monitor the movement of people or registration, we do not have so much here in the Philippines. No, there's no national application that we have to download, whether we like it or not. There have been some initiatives in the local level, especially in the big cities. For example, in my city, there's a different app. In another city of my parents, it's a different app. So it's not really integrated, no? And then it's really purely voluntary. So in this sense, the state of monitoring of, for example, the Big Brother monitoring or the role of PoliTech in that sense with the pandemic is not so much an issue in the Philippines, no? But again, it's quite similar to Taiwan that we also want somehow better monitoring in a sense of at least contact tracing, no? I mean, there is contact tracing again by the city, but it's really just on the city level. There's no large, how do I say it? Large central level um, central level control or monitoring. Now, it will definitely play a big role in the future, especially in the elections. But right now, it's very traditional. It's still the daily issues that are still the concern of people. When will we get our vaccines? Or if you're going to do a lockdown, it's fine, but we need dole-outs. We need allowances for our everyday living. No? So again, I think we already have exhausted most of the questions, and I'd like to thank our wonderful panelists for today and the wonderful audience, and of course the conference for hosting this panel. No? So thank you very much for all of your attention. And if you have questions, I think you have the program. You can send a message or an email to each of our speakers. No? So I think it's already the break time. So if I may, allow me to finish a bit early, no, at least no, for our panel. So I'd like to ask everyone to give a warm round of applause, whether it's virtual through your emojis or your cameras. Okay, thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ben, Teshakur, Kamsia, Salamat, Arigato to all the panelists. Great to have you for this very wide and deep, PoliTech discussion, and thank you.